Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Cancel This. My name is Gothix, and I am super excited to be speaking with Blaire White. You probably know her from YouTube. She's very controversial and problematic with her opinions as a trans person. So we are excited to have her on the show today. How are you, Blaire?
I'm so good. I'm so excited because I've been a supporter of yours for a minute now. I'm not sure exactly when I discovered you and everything that you do, but I remember when I did, I'm pretty sure I instantly shot you a DM and I was like, love your channel, love your work. So this is cool. I'm glad we're doing this.
Yeah, I actually remember the DM you sent me. I was like, Blaire just messaged me, which is so weird. I'm still getting used to all these big name people on YouTube that I would always watch. And now that I'm doing videos, I'm like, these people are talking to me. I'm still getting used to it. But
I remember that too. I remember being like, why is this person in my DMs? And it's like, oh, makes sense.
Yeah. Now we're just kind of used to it. So listen, I invited you on the show here because I value your opinion as a trans person. And I'm sure you're very familiar with the controversy surrounding Dave Chappelle and his latest special. And I want to do my part and amplify trans voices. So I'm going to amplify yours. So the first question that I have, and I saw your video where you commentated on his special, and it was really, really moving. And I encourage anyone watching this to go to Blaire's channel and check that out. So what I want to know is, with the protests surrounding Chappelle, why do you think there was so much silence in regards to his friend Daphne?
I think because it's politically inconvenient, obviously. You know, there's a narrative that this special is full of transphobic hate, full of derogatory comments toward the trans community. And that's, of course, the only way you can perceive it as such is if you have no sense of humor, which, spoiler alert, that is the bulk of trans activists and people that tend to be on that side of the field. You know, there's a lot of problems with the trans community. And for people who have watched my channel or have yet to watch it and maybe will after seeing this, you'll know that I do talk a lot about the issues within the trans community. I think one of the big ones is no sense of humor. And I think that unfortunately, and again, the community is such a loaded word, right? I mean, I'm sure.
Right.
But for the people that are making a big deal about it, let's just say that, I don't think that they're quite aware of how it's translating to the general public, because anytime you see the special and the backlash being discussed on any politically neutral medium, so I follow like the Shade Room on Instagram, which is like pop culture and entertainment, and all the comments are like talking about how the trans community looks like a joke, and this is maybe a medium that would be more sympathetic towards them. You know, that's just one example, but it just makes us look like sensitive crybabies with no sense of humor, who also have a superiority complex to think that we can't be joked about.
Oof, that is so, I'm gonna have to agree with you, honestly. And before I really started getting into your content, I thought the majority, I thought trans people acted in the way that these protesters are acting, where I felt like I always had to self-censor myself, walk on eggshells. And I definitely get that sense of superiority where I can't even have a joke with someone without taking it as a serious issue. And it's so crazy because you weren't offended by anything that happened in the special, were you?
No, I was offended by the fact that trans activists possibly killed his trans friend.
Right.
So for those of you that need the context, so in the special, not to spoil it because everyone should go watch it, it's a good special. Was I dying laughing? Was it hilarious? Was it like peak comedy? No, but it was good. But the part that really moved me personally was Dave talking about his friend Daphne Dorman, who was a trans woman who went on record to defend Dave after the last controversy where he was also called transphobic because of a prior special on Netflix. And you probably relate to this. I know I relate to this. When you're a minority who steps out of line from exactly what the people who support groupthink want you to do, say, and believe, you get hounded almost more so than, you know, people on the right or people that they view as their enemies. There's a particular hatred that comes from these minority groups and these social justice activists who see someone like you or like I, who are defectors, right? Like, they hate us. And so they hated Daphne Dorman to the point where they were harassing her for days. And 6 days after this hate campaign started against Daphne for defending Dave, she killed herself. Now, to be specific, Dave definitely said, like, There could have been a lot of things going on, but certainly a hate mob from your own community lasting a week long doesn't help, right?
Mhm.
So the fact that she's been so left out, I think, is disturbing. I think that there are people on the right who want to view the special as a sort of like dunking on trans activism and just want to make it out to be this special where Dave is just calling trans women men for the sake of it and trying to prove a point. And that's not really what it was. And then there's people on the left who want to completely ignore Daphne's existence because it breaks their narrative. So I think, unfortunately, it's just this political football being thrown back and forth. But the reality is we have to have a discussion about how the trans community and the LGBT community, these activists, potentially killed Daphne Dorman. And this is not the first time they have bully-sided someone, right? August Ames was an adult actress who declared that she wasn't comfortable working with homosexual men, was bullied online because of it, huge hate mob against her, killed herself. There is precedent for this. And I know you get a lot of hate, I get a lot of hate. To say it doesn't affect us would be a lie, right? Like, we may get better at how we handle it and it may affect us less over time, but especially if you've never experienced it, it can be very heavy.
Right. And that's something that I think people don't want to acknowledge. Is it's so contradicting to say that the rhetoric from the jokes that Dave Chappelle had was harmful, but then there's no self-awareness to see that the rhetoric that you're spewing online for a week straight doesn't psychologically impact someone. And I've gone through cancel culture many times, and I can only imagine how many times mobs have gone after you. It doesn't feel good, does it? Like it's
No, and I think that I have, a certain image of being very much, kind of bitchy, kind of above it all, whatever. And that is a part of me for sure. That's not that that's not genuine, but I'm also a human being. So it does affect you. And there's a particular way that it affects you when it's like your community, right? So putting yourself in the shoes of Daphne Dorman, she's a trans woman who hasn't really experienced fame or notoriety before. She was an underground comedian. And suddenly she's mentioned on this Netflix special. Her name's everywhere. And then rather than do what the mob wanted her to do, which was throw Dave under the bus, she chose the opposite. And what happened. But you have to put yourself in the mindset of someone who's never experienced that before. It's probably very earth-shattering. And especially, she was probably considering, where do I go from here? My entire community is turning their back on me. Can I go to, establishments that are LGBT friendly now? Can I not? That's a conundrum I found myself in. Like, do I go to the gay bar with my friends that want to go, or am I going to get jumped? Like,
right.
You never know. So I feel for it. And I think that the larger message of Dave Chappelle special was against cancel culture. That was the whole point of it.
So I have to ask, do you recall what the turning point was in the trans community where, because if I think back maybe 10, 15 years ago, the trans people that I knew seemed a lot happier, seemed a lot more fun and less offended by things. And I think I can say that about overall in the LGBT community. Do you think that there was a turning point? What made this happen where all the hostility and the divisiveness started really evolving?
Okay, so I'm just going to say it exactly how it is, and I really don't care who gets mad. There are actual trans people who experience gender dysphoria at a young age, who for them, whatever people may think of transgenderism, it is a biological phenomenon to these people. I consider myself one of them. And I'm trans not because of a political agenda or because of an ideological leaning. It's not an ideology for me. It's a phenomenon that happened to me as a child when I was born, and it's followed me all throughout life. Can't get rid of it. Part of who I am. And then there are people who are trans for a political agenda. Think of the people who have 6 different pronouns in their bio, but have never medically transitioned. That have no actual bodily attachment or experience with being transgender in the terms of having gender dysphoria, acting on it, etc. There are a lot of people who worm their way into a transgender label through means that are BS. Demi Lovato, I'm looking at you. These are the people, right, that have these politically charged ideas and want to go after people and want to frankly ruin people's lives who disagree with them. And then you meet real trans people. And some of my best friends in life and the people I admire the most are trans women who, all the politics, whatever, they have senses of humor. They're just very different. There's 2 different types of people. So when you mean the turning point, I remember prior to Trump. I think Trump is kind of what did it, not Trump directly, but the new politically charged era of like the world versus Trump, the media versus Trump. I think that contributed to it greatly, because before that, there was transgender people in the media and they are portrayed very differently. Think of Carmen Carrera, think of Laverne Cox, think of Janet Mock. Now, I don't agree with any of those women politically, but they are real transsexual women who were pretty apolitical. And they're portrayed just for that. And then all of a sudden now the people getting headlines for being trans is Sam Smith, is Demi Lovato, is Alok Vaid Menon. It's these people that have never taken a hormone a day in their life who feel this political purpose. And it's very different. And I don't relate to it personally. None of my trans friends in real life relate to it. And so I think that's the difference. It's when it's ideology versus this is just who the hell I am. And it's not about like how you look. It's not about like, oh, I had this many surgeries and they didn't. It's not about that. It's about like, are you living your life as a trans person, or are you living your life as a person who is not perceived as trans by the world at all? You're just a guy, Sam Smith. You're just a chick, Demi Lovato, but you're assuming the trans label for political purposes and for clout, frankly. That's the difference, right? So like, I would eat my words tomorrow if Demi Lovato came out and was like, hey, like I'm really transitioning. I'm going on testosterone. I'm living my life this way. I would say, you know what? I was wrong about her. But that's not going to happen, because for her, it's about, and she has a lot of other problems. It's not just, she has a lot of other problems. But for Sam Smith in particular, so he comes out as non-binary, as trans, and then after that, what? Right. You're just still out here living your life as a gay man. I've seen Sam Smith in clubs in Hollywood when I lived there. He's just a gay guy hanging out with other gay guys. Like, it's not like some trans person. So it's just a lot of BS. And it's unfortunate that, you know, in reality, trans people still are a group that struggle for people to understand exactly what it is, right? And none of this helps, right? The 97 genders, the I'm a man, but I'm a woman, but I'm neither, but I'm both, but gender isn't real, but it's very important and very real. Like, none of that helps. It actually hurts. And I think that's the main thing, is trans activists only know how to shoot themselves in the foot.
Why do you think those voices in particular get amplified so much?
Because they're clowns.
Okay. All right. I like that answer.
I'm being quite literal, because you look at these people and they present themselves physically as clowns. Alok Vaid Menon, do you know who that is?
No.
Okay. Don't even Google. It's gonna ruin it. But these people quite literally grow out their armpit hair, dye their armpit hair, have 1 million piercings, have the ugliest haircut possible, wear the stupidest makeup possible, sometimes literally put clown noses, like red circles on their nose. They present themselves as clowns. They're walking, talking clickbait. So is the media going to have Blaire White on to discuss her thoughts about it? Or are they going to have someone with purple hair who's frothing at the mouth and talking about how all white people are evil? The media is going to go where it gets the most eyes, the loudest voice. It's going to be that. So I understand that aspect of it. They're quite literally entertainment.
That's so interesting, because also I can understand it from the media's perspective, because the job is to make money. It's to get views. I get that. But I think just in the way that you're describing it, and the way that I see it too, when I see all of these additional things in the transgender community with like the crazy amounts of pronouns and identifying with inanimate objects, to me it feels like a joke. And I feel really bad for the community, because if the goal is to seek more inclusion and representation and all that, I feel like they're doing the opposite.
Yeah.
Because nobody's taking them seriously.
Yeah. And you know, one of the frustrating parts, because I have a lot of trans friends who are not public figures and not out there in the way that I am. And one of their biggest things is like, okay, so say that I want to start speaking up, where am I actually going to find a tribe? Like, most people, human beings are very tribe oriented. So if someone goes against these leftist ideas of what trans is, are they going to have a home on the right? That's very important to most people. And a lot of them still feel like they won't. Now, for me, I don't really care about a tribe. I don't care, you know, if I'm on the right or on the left or in the center, or the labels are very unimportant to me. My tribe is individuals who are cool. That's my tribe. And none of my friends have anything in common with each other. Like, so my best friend is a little person from Cuba who is a reality TV star. My second best friend is a transgender refugee from Ghana. My third best friend is like some like Texan cowboy hat wearing. Like, all my friends are different because I don't have a tribe. But a lot of trans people are worried, like, well, I don't have friends on the right, so why would I speak against these crazy voices on the left? And that is the sort of thing that I think stops my community from speaking out.
I can see that, and that's why I think, highlighting diversity of thought, like I'm doing right now, is important because it's very easy to feel like you're not alone, or it's very easy to feel like you are alone, or you're not going to be able to find. Some people do want to try, but I get that. But I also think the ones that want to stay in on their side that they're currently at, because they don't want to get attacked. I wouldn't want to be friends with those types of people anyway. Where I was presented with an ulterior, like I had to do as they say in order for me to live my life the way that I want. That doesn't seem very helpful.
I agree. And this isn't even just about the trans issue, but so much of the BS we see going on, whether it be from COVID restrictions to lockdowns to, so many different policies that I think you and I would probably agree are insane. So much of them would be stamped out today if people just stood up. So obviously a microcosm of that is the trans thing, how not many of us want to stand up. But in the broader society, it goes for everything. And the fact that people like you and I are treated like, pariahs, or like what we're saying is so insane when it's really just common sense. That is the driving factor. A lot of people are afraid of shame. A lot of people are afraid of losing connections with friends. I'm sure you've lost friends from doing the
Oh
kind of
yeah.
content you do. I mean, that's just a given. And I've lost friends. I mean, you make many more, and you find new people that are into what you're doing and agree with you. And it's not about only people who agree with you, but people who are tolerant of diversity of thought, like you said. But people are afraid of making that leap. And I also recognize that I'm lucky in the sense that I literally get paid to sit here and talk about these things. Most people don't feel like making the sacrifice of like losing their job and stuff. So I get it, but it is frustrating that if we all stood up as one, a lot of this crap would be over right now.
Going back to the Dave Chappelle special, was there anything in particular that you can say you could relate to Daphne on?
Yeah, there was a really interesting quote that Dave relayed in the special that it's not about. Basically, in the special, Dave said, "I don't understand you being trans," to Daphne. "I don't get it. I don't understand it." And Daphne said, it's not for you to understand. I only need you to believe me that I'm having a human experience." And I think that's very important because we don't view each other as humans anymore. We view each other as little political talking heads or enemies, foes, my tribe, their tribe. And in reality, we're all just on this planet having this experience, and it looks different for each and every one of us. I think a lot of us crave the days before, let's say maybe 2015, 2016, where things took a turn for the worse in terms of civility for those who think differently. I remember the days. I'm old enough to remember the days when we weren't all at war with each other. There were things we disagreed on, there were things we agreed on, but we all had a basic respect for each other. I don't feel like people on the left have even an iota of respect for me. I think that if I died tomorrow, Twitter would be full of leftists celebrating. That's really what I believe, because that's what they've shown me so far. And that's just so ugly. And so I think that we can all strive to get to a point where we start viewing each other as people. And I'm guilty of sometimes treating people more so of an ideological enemy than a human, but I do work at it every day to not be like that.
That's really awesome, and I commend you for that because you can self-reflect, and I can't say that a lot about a lot of other people. All right, so I got the last question for you, and I watched your video where you were talking about this Chappelle stand-up special, and you said something that I really liked, and I wish it was conveyed more, where you said you don't care about if people see you in the way that you see yourself. And if people call you a man, it's whatever. People call you a woman, it's whatever. Why do you think like that, and why do you think other people that are trans can't think like that?
I think that I mean, the life that I lived growing up was very different than the life I live now. So I grew up in a very small town in a very, very conservative area back in the time where it was like pre-gay marriage legalization. It was a very different time for people who were different, basically. I grew up getting bullied very heavily. I used to get jumped. I used to fight every single day of my life. And I basically had teachers society, parents, everyone telling me that me being innately feminine was wrong, right? Like, because as early as kindergarten, I was getting called a fag or a sissy or whatever before I even knew what that was, because I've always been innately just very naturally feminine in my nature. And so I kind of inherently knew growing up, I was like, all these people are idiots. Like, I wasn't even mad at, I was like, they're just so bad. I almost like feel bad for them. Like, look at these people that are so like blindly driven by like media and society, and ew, like it was always just so gross, right? And so I think that kind of prepared me for what I do now, which is like half of the left like calling me a traitor, half of the right calling me a man, but I don't care, because the only people whose opinions matter in my life are my loved ones and people very close to me. I don't know why most people can't think that way. I think that unfortunately, it's a very futile attempt to get the world to view you exactly the way you view yourself. No one achieves that. There's no one on the planet that wakes up every day, looks in the mirror, and the person that they are is exactly the way they're perceived by everyone. Everyone's perceived by someone differently. To some people, I'm a villain who's trying to harm the trans community or enact negative change. To other people, I meet them on the street and they're crying because I've changed their life in a positive way. So I can't really believe either, right? If you believe the negative, you have to believe the positive, and vice versa. For me, I'm just a person, and however I impact each individual person is different. And I said in the video, like, I don't feel validation by like these leftist woke anime avatar people saying trans women are women. I don't feel anything positive from that, because I'm Blaire. I don't feel anything negative when you have maybe the like Catholic knight on horse avatar saying trans women are men, because again, I'm Blaire. That person doesn't know me. I am who I am as an individual before any of these labels that anyone puts on them. And I think more people should probably live like that.
I love that. Blaire, I want to thank you so much for sitting down with me and letting me pick your brain on this topic. Looking forward to having another chat.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, and keep killing it.